Okay. Yeah. Also, too, a couple more speakers today. I highly recommend sticking around to see Zach Franken's talk on access control. I got to see a demo of what he's about to show you guys when he was in Seattle last weekend, and it is freaking scary. Very, very scary what he's going to demonstrate in regards to access control systems. It's pretty frightening. And a cool-looking demo, too. Okay, up now is Alexander Muentz. He is a lawyer. Don't hold it against him. And he'll be talking about hackers, script kiddies, and lawyers. And with that, I'm going to let him take it away so we can get rolling. So, oh, you don't have to applaud for that.
I think they're applauding for you. Can you hear me? Yeah, I'll just use this one.
Is this one working? Good.
Use both.
Okay. Okay. I'm not just a lawyer. I'm also still a practicing sysadmin, so at least I've not completely gone to the dark side. Unlike the last talk I gave at Lisa, where an old coworker of mine gave me shit for about 5 minutes while introducing me. Standard disclaimer, because everything now needs a disclaimer now that I'm a member of the bar. I am a lawyer. Oh. I have no idea how I can adjust that. No, it's. I was hoping I wouldn't have to do this, but evidently everyone needs to configure X while they're here. Okay. Let's try that again. No. Yeah. Okay. My apply button's out. What the hell? It didn't seem to take. Okay, I take back that sysadmin part. I'm just a lawyer. Okay. back to the disclaimers. I love disclaimers. I am a lawyer. I'm not your lawyer. So this is not advice. This is for your amusement alone. If you do get in trouble, call a lawyer, preferably one in the state that you just got arrested in. The topics presented do not in any way implicate my employer, and I don't even know what their personal views on this are. This field of law is in flux. This is an important bit. What is true today, or what I think is true today, may change next week 180 degrees, which should scare everyone. And local laws may vary, so I'm going to give a basic overview of federal law. Individual state laws may mirror them or may be 180 degrees off. That said, I'm going to give a quick overview. I've described these in the preparation, attack, response model. I'm going to give a couple basic kinds of attacks, and then what can I do to protect my users, myself, and my organization. Okay. This spawns actually from sort of a drunken conversation / rant at PumpCon 2005, where I was trying to defend what I do for a living as I'm not a script kiddie. You know, I'm not social engineering. I have a subpoena. It actually has power. And then I got to thinking, what is the real difference? Because they have a lot of the same effects. You know, for example, I don't like you, and you know, think of it this way. You know, I remember reading a line from a discussion given at Hotbots about denial of service attacks are what every script kiddie thinks is a way to solve any social problem. And we clearly know that that's not true. It's litigation is what solves every social problem. Because that's, you know, what adults do. As opposed to ever, you know, God forbid, actually talking to one another. But that's another talk entirely. But an injunction can be a shutdown. You know, I just want you off the line. I want you offline. I want to hurt you in some way. Well, I can do a massive denial of service attack, or I can just, you know, slap you with an injunction and say you stop, or the sheriffs will come and stop you from doing that. It might be instead I might be doing an attack to get information from you. It could be sort of a database intrusion, a traditional hack, or I could just serve you with a subpoena. It's the same thing. I want your information. Give it to me. And also, similar precautions come to mind. Good off-site backups. I mean, as anyone who's ever admined a box that has, you know, users that don't like, you know, random deletions of data, it's really nice to have tapes off-site, preferably not in your living room. You know, actually have like the nice people from Arcus or Iron Mountain come and put them in the little boxes and take them to wherever they take them, probably their living rooms. I've actually never been to an Arcus facility, so for all I know, it's like, you know, oh no, it's at Bob's house. Yeah. U-Haul. And also, you know, the equivalent of a, you know, a destructive search warrant, you know, a natural disaster. There were tornadoes. We lost the data center. Where are the backups? And I often talk about this because I talk to companies as well about why you need to have a strong searching and archive solution, which ironically is something my company does not sell. So I don't know why I push it other than it makes life so much easier. Okay, a couple different kinds of legal attacks. I'm going to start with the rarest and most destructive, and the one that you need to be, I think, most careful if you ever, honest to God, are on the target end of a search warrant. Then subpoenas, discovery, wiretaps, and transitive trust attacks. I'll go into that. That's been kind of getting bigger and bigger in my mind because, well, we'll see why. First off, search warrants. I like putting the Fourth Amendment in pretty much any presentation I can do because I want people to remember it. I want people to live it because I'm really scared that it doesn't have any more meaning anymore. You know, the rights of people to be secure, not unless, you know, they've got child porn or unless they, you know, they have a bin in their name or something like that. And maybe I'm, you know, some old-fashioned liberal or something like that where I think, you know, really the police should not be able to just tear through your shit because they suspect you of a crime unless they've got enough, you know, they need to have enough reason to do that. And that's what this amendment's for. And they shouldn't be able to tear through your computer stuff as well unless they've got reasonable suspicion. So looking through what you have to do if you're a law enforcement officer to get a warrant, or what you can, if they don't do this, you can get the warrant kicked. Warrant requires a neutral judicial officer. Even when some states allow the attorney general to issue search warrants, unless if they are doing it, but they still have to have someone else convince them. They have to act in their neutral role, not as their advocate role. Most of the time, it's a magistrate or a magistrate judge who sits there and just reviews search warrants and arrest warrants and says, okay, yes, there's enough probable cause. It's not absolute proof, but it's more than just wild-ass guess that a crime occurred and that the person's named and/or the evidence is within that place that they're naming to search. So they have to be fairly specific in that. I can't, if I'm a DA and I want to get a search warrant, I can't say I want evidence from everyone named John in the city of Los Angeles. I have to say, no, I believe at 1234 Anywhere Street there exists evidence of this crime. I have to be very specific about the crime as well, or the types of crimes. So that way I can't just knock down your door, take everything, and then figure it out later. It also requires, and this is the important part, a signed written affidavit. The written part is useful because it allows someone like me, when they're a defense attorney, to again figure out, was that warrant too broad? There's a writing, not of the judge, but of the officer saying, I need to know this information. And particularity, that limits the police's ability to go and run roughshod over you. Now, a warrant allows, and this is one of those obvious things, it allows the items named in the warrant. If they find, we think you have evidence of manufactured child pornography. Well, we found 180 images of children doing things that you really shouldn't be doing. Okay, I can seize that. It can seize contraband, can seize evidence, fruits, i.e. anything gained by that. Usually that's used, for example, such as a bank robbery. Well, the money is a fruit of that crime. The police can seize that as well. And the instrumentalities, the tools used to create the crime. Interestingly, though, that is also, contraband can be seized even if it's not named in the warrant. So if they're tearing your house apart looking for, say, money laundering, they find child porn, they get to take that as well. So the scope of the warrant can expand as it's being executed. Now, for computers, those of us who are sysadmins, there's this issue about what do you seize? Do you seize the whole computer? Do you just show up and forensically image the drive and let the sysadmin have it back? Or do you just de-rack the whole thing, load it in a truck, and say, I'll see you in 2 years? Which is why I call the search warrant as an attack noisy and destructive. You have minimal warning. If at best it's, hi, we'd like to go into your NOC. We're interested in that server rack and that server rack. And what makes it difficult is that you can't do anything about it. You're just there watching. And I've heard of this. I've not seen it because I've not actually been a part of a search warrant. I've never seen a search warrant executed for computer-based evidence. But I've talked to a few police that do this. They have mentioned that they use techniques to unintentionally commit collateral damage. They get the biggest, ugliest guy with a pair of bolt cutters who says, yeah, I'm here to remove the servers. And of course, if you're thinking, oh my God, Mongo's going to destroy everything. He's just going to start cutting cables. He's going to wreck everything. Oh God, I've got to go talk to him. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to get information out of you. It's like if you get stopped, if you get pulled over, they're going to start asking questions. They don't have the right to search, but they're going to ask and watch to see maybe you'll give it up. Maybe you'll waive your rights. Okay. Preparing for it. Obviously, you want to have sort of defenses in place for when a search warrant occurs. I'm a big fan of multiple site, both data and systems backup. If you can have hot swappable, hot switchable systems in multiple jurisdictions, even if they come and tear your systems out of location A, you just flick a switch, go to B. I'm thinking of, I think it was Alternet, had had an issue where they de-racked a bunch of servers and they weren't able to cut over as quickly, so they had some downtime. Automatic failover. You don't have to do anything because while, if you're the manager of the NOC or sysadmin in the NOC during the search warrant, you're watching them. You're not able to, in fact, they may not allow you to touch any keyboards. They may, in fact, move you into a room and say, you're not touching anything. Put down everything that has a circuit in it. Because they don't want you to potentially destroy evidence. And they don't, even if you're saying, but look, I'm just a sysadmin, I don't know what's on any of these things, they don't know. And it's within their rights to just say, you don't touch anything, you don't do anything. I want to give a quick aside to warrantless searches. I've only seen one or two of these in the case law. There's a recent one called Heckenkamp v. U.S. where they were able to do an exigent circumstances or emergency search of a defendant's computer with no warrant, just we have enough suspicion that he's got evidence of committing a crime. We're just going to take the machine. Or actually, we're going to image the machine and give it back to him. Others are search incident to lawful arrest. If you're arrested for, say, DUI, you have a laptop in your possession, they can search it. They can look through it. Kind of scary. Automobile searches. It's not as they can look through anything that's contained in the car if it's seized as either evidence or if, going back to the DUI example, it's what's known as an inventory search. They can look through the contents to make sure that they didn't, that nothing goes missing. Of course, they can also look through to find out if you're doing anything. Regulatory searches. Search if you're crossing borders or you're going into an area that is considered to be, you have a diminished right of privacy, they can search it. So airport is a potential issue here. But crossing borders, there are several cases of people who come in from Canada, they've got a laptop, Customs says, we're taking the drive. And it's, well, I'm sorry, do you need to, it's like, nope, we're allowed to. We're allowed to search you, we're allowed to take whatever we like, and we'll send you back the drive if it proves to be innocent. Usually these cases come up because there's something not innocent on the drive and they get convicted and then they bring up that as a grounds for appeal, 5 years later after they spend a little time in jail. I'm not going to make that joke anymore. The first time I gave a talk about computer crime, I was like, yeah, because federal prison sucks. And Bernie S. was in the audience. Yeah. And it's like, oops, sorry, man. How's your jaw? Ironically, his parole officer is one of my wife's graduate students. It's like small world there. Next, wiretaps. Now, this is this area of law is really in flux because we don't know what all this means yet. Because this kind of goes into the NSA spying scandal. We have at least AT&T, if not other providers, who have just said, "Oh yeah, sure, you can set up like a little room in our NOC and sniff whatever you like." I mean, it's not like it's important or anything. But the big law that allows them to do anything is CALEA, Communications Assistance for Law Enforcement Act. It's really neat. In order to prevent innocent communications from being sniffed, the police are able to say, I want your information, but not yours. You both use the same router. You both maybe have accounts in the same system. I want to limit all the captured packets to his. And it's, wow, because that's an issue with the Fourth Amendment stuff, because he's got a privacy right. It's like, why are you sniffing my packets when you want him? So they put the burden on the ISP. The ISP has to figure out some way of carving the packets, which I foresee a big boom in CALEA-compliant routers and switches. It's done concurrent with the transmission. It has to be done simultaneously. There's something about a CALEA warrant, which is roughly the same as a search warrant or a wiretap warrant. There's one issue that has not yet been determined, which is the government cannot specify the equipment or specifications. They just have to say it has to be able to give the packets to us in a reportable or usable fashion. Recently, the DOJ was claiming that they didn't even have to alert the ISP. They should just have a back door into systems to be able to say, oh, we've decided to. First, you've got, of course, a Fourth Amendment or a privacy issue, like, oh, well, we didn't really, you don't know, so you don't ever have a chance to look into whether or not a warrant was issued. But also, clearly, if it's an open door for the government, it's an open door for other people. And that's a really nice thing to do, to just say, oh, give me all your packets, thank you. Or, hell, if you've got the code to carve it out, you could specify the people you're attacking and just have a CALEA-compliant wiretap send you the information. It's like a playground for attackers. I'm calling the wiretap attack profile stealthy and incriminating, because anyone who's involved doesn't know. For your IT defenses, you've got best one I can think of is strong encryption that you control. If the ISP or the provider controls the encryption, they can be forced to divulge the encryption keys under Section 103 of CALEA. So if you think that someone's sniffing your packets, you need to control it. You can't just turn it over to a vendor and say, make sure our link is secure. So you have to hold the keys, and you have to be the sole holder of the keys. They can subpoena keys, but then at that point, it's no longer stealthy. It's like, hi, we'd like your encryption keys for this link. Huh, I wonder why. So at that point, you can then say, guys, I think we should stop using the internet. Or at least, we should know that Uncle Sam's listening in. So, stop, I don't know, buying Coke or, selling wares.
Online?
Yeah. Sneakernet. Wow, that's a spam. Now, a legal defense to a wiretap is you attack the warrant when revealed. It has to be revealed after the indictment is handed down. At that point, a lawyer can possibly pick through and see if there are any flaws in it, and then go and fight it. I have no idea why my slides are way out of order here. I blame OpenOffice. Okay, I'm sorry because I'm doing this like an idiot. I want to go back to warrants. I apologize about the out of order here. One of the things, thinking of defenses, IT, the multiple site data and systems, during the attack, it's the helpful versus passive. If you're the system and you have to figure out what they're looking for, now you can look at the warrant and they can say, we want all the information that Bob Smith has. Well, if you think, there are two ways you can do this. If you think that you're implicated with Bob Smith, however it is, the best thing for you to do is just shut up and let them de-rack your servers. If you know that you have nothing to do with it, you can instead turn around and say, Bob Smith's stuff is on that box. So that way you've limited the destruction from all your boxing to one box. You might even be able to negotiate with them to say, I'll give you it's this path, or hell, I even have a backup. You can just take the tapes. Now, two things you absolutely cannot do. Do not interfere. Do not lie to the police when they're there, because that's obstruction of justice, and now you're in the hot seat. And a law enforcement officer, while I'm not going to accuse him of this, can use that leverage to expand the scope of the search. You lie, they say, well, I can get you for obstruction. I can now turn around and say, I want to look at some other boxes that aren't named in the search warrant. Do you agree to this? And of course, you're saying, wow, I'm a skinny white boy. I really don't want to go to jail. Because the fact that I'm a really good Linux hacker doesn't seem to work well in cell block B. And finally, shut the fuck up. Police are trained to get you to talk through either being nice to you, being terrifying, whatever. I've seen, in fact, cases I've worked on where if the defendant had just been quiet, even when they're arrested, like, we're going to arrest you, fine, thank you, arrest me. Can I have my quarter? I'm going to go give someone a call. At that point, it's often better, because what will happen is you'll want to explain things. And I've read transcripts of those explaining things where they're now admitting to like multiple crimes. Like, oh God. Yeah, it's really sad because I read these like, dude, if you shut up, and of course, this translates to fast forward to like, 5 days later through the glass, and it's like, man, why aren't you getting me out? Like, because you went from a misdemeanor to a multiple felony with your own mouth. I can't get you off. If we could go back a couple of days, I could have, just kicked you and said, shut up. So be quiet, especially in the case where you are peripheral to the search. You're just the sysadmin. You know you've got nothing to do with it. You don't want to be too friendly because they're going to start asking, can I look at other stuff? And all of a sudden, you might implicate yourself. Because if you've got something that's of questionable legality or might look questionable because it might take longer to sort out, and even if you're eventually found not guilty, it's, a good criminal defense is anywhere from $5,000 to, $150,000. And while I would happily render such assistance, I don't really think anyone wants to spend, what I paid to go to law school to, defend it. Cleaning up afterwards. There's a legal approach, which is to attempt to quash the search warrant, exclude the evidence because it was a bad search warrant, and then IT is be able to cut over to alternate sites or restore from backup on new boxes and go. Attempts. Yeah.
How's that going to help you on a federal level? If something of a federal nature gets onto your corporate box, well, they have the jurisdiction.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, that's why you may want to, base stuff in other countries as well. If you're that big where you're afraid that. Also, those search warrants are generally specific to an individual. Federal search warrant is generally specific to an individual U.S. court district. For example, like the Southern District of California. So if you had boxes in, say, San Diego and also had boxes in San Francisco, they'd need to have 2 warrants. If they don't know enough about your systems yet, you might be able to still do a cutover before they realize, wait a minute, they have an extra set of boxes. They've got a colo somewhere else. And it adds to their coordination problems. Not that I'm telling you how to run like an illegal ring or anything, but it helps to have systems. I mean, also just from a general disaster recovery. Chances are a network outage in one region won't be replicated in another region. So it helps to just have, we've got colo boxes in New York and California. We're relatively safe. It's just this is something else that protects you against. Okay. The next is subpoenas. This is a court-backed order for information. It's not a court order, per se. This is something that grand juries, regulatory agencies, and lawyers, and under Pennsylvania law, I can issue a subpoena without any court case. Just walk up, here's a subpoena, give me a beer. And as long as it's not overly burdensome to the person and it's not done for harassing reasons, I can do it. I almost did it at the last PumpCon. Because you're like, wow, that's really powerful. Like, well, except, of course, there's this whole thing that I can't do it for harassing reasons. And I'm thinking going to, also the other problem is that they can respond in up to 10 days. So I'm going to have a flat, warm beer. And it may also have, adulterating substances in it by then. But it's not a court order. Court order is by a judge. So a court order has more power. You can slap someone around with a court order because you either do this or I'm going to go back to court and get a contempt order. Contempt order is anything from fines for every day to we're going to accommodate your housing for a little while. You're going to be hanging out in jail, which is a really effective. For people who are white collar, that's a fairly effective thing because you can't bail out. You have to then comply with whatever the judge asked. But a subpoena, you can turn a subpoena into a court order if you show up with a subpoena and the person responding does not do anything. They don't even come back to court and say, I'm going to fight this. They just ignore it. Then you can turn the subpoena into a court order. 2 basic kinds of subpoenas. The subpoena duces tecum, bring us information, our stuff, or let us come somewhere and look at your stuff. That's going to be the more common forms. I've actually helped write a few of these. for the consulting practice, where it's, hi, lawyer, you don't understand how stuff is stored. You need to ask for backup tapes, and they don't look like 8 tracks. And then you've got the ad testificandum, which is the come to court or come to some place and testify. And it's if you lie or damage the truth in any way, it's like going to court and lying. It's perjury. Okay. What makes subpoenas kind of scary is there's very little protection from it. You do have generally between 5 and 10 days, depending on the jurisdiction, to say either let me answer or let me fight it. But you have no right against self-incrimination. I can go and subpoena somebody for stuff that damages them. If there's some legal fight, or the only real protections are no privileged material. That's generally medical records, attorney-client. Trade secrets are also generally protected from subpoenas. You can, if you're really an asshole, you can actually get the judge to view your trade secrets. Usually if you're dealing with serious IP cases, those are things that people litigate over for months because you don't want to get your trade secrets out. There are some limits on what you can subpoena. You can claim, it's unduly burdensome. Something like, we seek all the information that's on your backup tapes going back to 1987. That's I've actually dealt with that when I was a sysadmin, where it's, give us everything that's responsive to this, and then some guy shows up with a rennet crate full of DLTs, completely unlabeled. Like, oh, god damn. And it's like... And of course, at that point, my friend who made fun of me at the last Lisa said, "Hey, asshole, you wanted to go to law school. Here's your first." Oh man. So I'm shunting them in for the next 3 weeks, going, "What's on this thing?" "I don't know. It's 80 gigs of crap that's not responsive." And because we didn't, I had now learned that could have just been a 5-minute phone call to the judge saying it's unduly burdensome, man. Unless you want to come down here and just rack tapes for the next couple of weeks. Generally, I don't think the judge would do that. Back to not for harassment or improper purpose, which is one of the parts of the business I work for. We get just on that line because you can often, imagine you're in a lawsuit with someone, with a company, and it's we want $100,000, or we're going to make your entire IT staff of 55 people work overtime for the next 4 months. You're going to do the numbers and go, oh, God, no. You want to check for $100,000? Fine. FedEx today. So you can't use it for harassment or the improper purpose, but it's done all the time. Let's see. I like to think of that as intrusive, mysterious, and dangerous because especially for governmental subpoenas, you don't know if you're peripheral, i.e., we think you hold some small little piece of information. We're actually going after those guys. Or you could be the target and they're just looking for stuff. What's scary is you don't know. They don't have to give the reason why, especially with an administrative subpoena. They can just come and say, we want your records on this. You may want to fight it if it's core to your business to make them go away. You may also just instead say, fine, here you go, please leave. So you have to figure out, and you don't know. You just have to kind of make some good guesses. The lucky bit is that you've got reasonable time response. So you can kind of put your heads together as a company, IT department, and legal department, and go, what is it that they're looking for? Because they're going to ask you, what's on those tapes? What's on those servers? And you're going to try to explain to them. And it's, is that the smoking gun, or is that completely irrelevant? Defenses. You can mitigate them. If you have some capability of going across all the information in your on all your systems and be able to pull stuff. I'm thinking, I've installed one Alta Vista search engine that kind of spidered against all of our internal documentation, and it would have made this a trivial. Because oftentimes the subpoenas may be, give us every document that Bob Smith wrote or got. That's some interesting Perl scripting, I think. Or it could be really, if you can do it really easily, you're a golden boy. Because you just go, okay, you want that on DVD or hard drive? Here you go. And wow, instead of the, oh my God, I have to physically go, I have to like grep on each system, including the ones that are in the basement that have been this has been decommissioned. Why hasn't it been donated? Oh God, I've got to go fire up this machine. It's like, 8mm tapes. Where do we get a drive for that? eBay. Actually, that's a current job we're doing where it's, we've got a bunch of these old stringy floppies. Like what? Like, and I'm thinking I remember what they are. Like this has got to be a mistake. And I'm thinking, do I have to go get like a Timex Sinclair 1000 with the stringy floppy? Like, where on God's earth am I going to find this? And of course, 5 seconds later, I'm like, eBay. We can do anything. Luckily, they then settled because it's like, I think I can find some of this stuff. There's a guy in England. Another story. A slightly sleazier method is what I like to think of as stonewalling or compartmentalization, where, and some IT departments are working like this anyway, where no one knows what the hell is going on. There's, who's got this data? I don't know. Or my favorite one working at a pharma company, I was the head Mac guy, and we had a handful of Mac servers, and one day a construction worker discovers another one. It'd been sheetrocked up. There's a cable. It had power and an Ethernet cable. And the guy's like, this looks like one of yours. Like, I have no idea what that is. And it's blinking. It's getting traffic. Like, oh, shit. I don't know. It's like a Centris 650. Like, this thing was built in 94. And so and I'm like watching my phone going, who's going to call? Because I'm going to ask him I can't get into the server. What server? What's on it? Because I just found out about it today.
What stopped working?
Yeah, it was all my special video, all my special image files are gone, or something like that. I don't know. It's just I don't know anything else to do because it's not even labeled. Maybe there'll be some group, and I'm looking at the files on it. It's I have no idea what this stuff is. It was actually the key server, so it actually did result in $3 million of the scientific software isn't working anymore. Oh, the licenses are on that box. Would have been helpful to tell me that there was, $3 million worth of IP on a, 10-year-old system. But hey, that's how I found out about it. Legal defenses. If you've got a subpoena against you, asking for stuff, you can do what's called, or a lawyer can do a motion to quash. You can say, it's overly burdensome, it's too broad, it's got trade secrets, and you can limit it. You can generally fight it out because, if it's done to harass, we want everything on every tape you've ever done. It's come on. It's a sexual harassment suit for someone who was fired last week. Chances are files from 1985 are irrelevant. Knock it out.
Question for you.
Yeah.
Let's say, for example, PostX default install, logs roll over every week, give or take. So you have 7 days of logs and then nothing. Let's say that you get subpoenaed for logs that occurred 5 days ago. Are you required at that point to back up the data while your lawyer's filing his motion to quash?
Yes. I'm going to get to that in the next section, which is called discovery. There's something called a litigation hold, where once you know, and this is a term of art, which I've learned to use that as term of art means this does not mean what you think it means. Anytime you know you're about to be sued, or you constructively know, which means you should have if you weren't an idiot, you cannot delete evidence. You have to hold all evidence that might be used against you.
What if you never log anything?
Then you're safe.
But there's legal rules and regulations that require you to log certain types of data.
No, it depends. I'm going to give that, Sarbanes-Oxley. I've worked mostly in the FDA-regulated fields, where we have to keep information about drug reactions for umpty clutch billion years, and the regulations were vague. So, but if you don't have to hold it, there's a big school of thought that says delete it, don't hold it. Now, admittedly, stuff like logs are generally not going to be unless your theory is something like, Bob adulterated this file, and it turned out to be, adulterated the design for the bumper on the Pinto, and therefore, because Bob did this, you're now liable for this. You would have had to hold the data. SOX comes into mind. HIPAA, not so much, because HIPAA is more about not leaking it.
Yeah, security around you.
Yeah, secure. It's keeping what's supposed to be secret. SOX, FDA regs, and the new federal rules of civil procedure sort of require, once you know there's a controversy, then you hold it.
Like the Pirate Bay, they had seized like tons of their servers over in like Switzerland or something. There, and it turned out they didn't log anything, so there's nothing to do.
Which is, especially if you're doing something. Well, okay, this should be one of those obvious things. If you know you're not in a legal gray area, you're firmly in the black.
It's legal from where they were. They just had special stipulations, extradition laws, or whatever between the states and the country that the servers were in. And so they were able to, subpoena their servers, and it just turns out there was no data on them in which to look. I mean, obviously there was torrent files, not even the actual files, just tracker files, and nothing incriminating, because there's nothing proving stuff. Right. In which case, that's a good case, and which not the law. Yeah, it's generally. Of course, it's from a sysadmin point of view, you want to log stuff because you want to figure out what went wrong. When things break. Okay, subpoenas. Encryption keys and passwords are probably not protected from disclosure. There's no case law on it yet. Oftentimes with a subpoena, you can't just, unless you don't actually have the keys. We subpoena your encrypted hard drive. Well, if you've got the keys, if you use it, therefore you de-encrypt it. You can't just hand them, here's the sparse image, smoke them if you got them. You actually have to, open it up and say, no, here's the actual data. It has to be in some form of reasonable format. I'm particularly fond of what is in the electronic discovery business called blowback, which is we're going to print it all on paper. Where's your loading dock? Which is scary because watching then hordes of my classmates from law school opening a box, paper, not responsive. So they put another slip sheet in to say this is not. It's like, oh my God, what have you done wrong that makes this your job? It's like, but it pays well. Like, yeah.
That could be used though for some theatrics though by the DEA though to say, oh, this is a huge problem because look how much printouts we have to do to
Yes. I worked on a case. It was a it was a internet drug sales ring. They were selling, I'm sure you've seen their advertisements. They were pulling, handing us DVDs of just raw data that they were giving us for discovery, saying we may introduce any of this. And my job was to slap it in and go, what is this? And I found 4.8 gigs. It's an access database of what? I don't know. It's half of it. And the lawyers are coming in and going, well, what does it mean? I don't know. It's crap. Can you be ready to testify about it in 5 minutes? Yeah, that'll be really short testimony. I swear, yeah, what is it? Crap. Is that your professional opinion? Yeah. Okay. Discovery. Discovery is the most likely thing you're going to deal with because it's much more likely that you're going to be, your organization, hopefully, not you personally, will get involved in a civil lawsuit. It works like a subpoena against parties to suit, except there's this automatic disclosure rule, which is once you're sued, you have to give over a bunch of stuff. And it's anything, the initial rule within, I think it's 10 days, maybe 20, depending on the jurisdiction, locations and types of electronically stored information. That is so vague, it terrifies me. I'm writing a paper now on whether or not voicemail
is electronically stored information under the federal rules, which has law firms terrified because they run off of, they often, because it's considered to be sort of like a cardinal sin, like bringing, a plate of bacon to Mecca, that you should ever miss a phone call. So they're the ones that have if you call my house, if you call like my office phone, it forwards and leave a voicemail, it forwards the file to my BlackBerry. Well, now it's electronically stored. Now it's discoverable. Oh my God! This is like now you're going to have my friends from law school. We're now going to like sitting to listening to tapes, going, "Hey Bob, want to go out golfing?" Not responsive. Okay, and you wonder why lawyers are cranky because that's what you get to do for 12 hours a day. At least until you're 35, and at that point, let you get out of the basement now. You can go into a courtroom. What I'm finding interesting is that it must disclose locations and types. So that's what servers, what boxes, what tapes, voicemails, whatever that you have. So it requires you within 10 days to come up with a list. You don't have to give it all the data over, but you at least have to have a list. Now, think of a company more than 50 employees. Think of that IT staff. Think of a company of 1,000 employees. The IT staff is frequently I'm the lead Unix guy. I'm the lead Windows guy, and there is stuff that they don't know about. Yet the company can get sanctioned for. Well, we found this box of stuff. It's oh yeah, that was in a crate. It was here before I started. I don't know anything about it. You have to disclose that, which is why there's a big incentive to just get rid of stuff. If you don't need it, toss it. However, destruction of evidence once the suit is likely has really, really nasty consequences. Sanctions to counsel, which we don't like because it comes out of our pay. We cannot charge a client for a sanction that happens to us. It's considered, against public policy. So it also basically means that, so I can say with a straight face, I'm sorry, I can't do that for you. I can't risk my license for you. Adverse inference instructions, these are fun, because these get to say, you deleted data, you deleted evidence. We get to argue in court that the absence of evidence is evidence of malice. You get to prove something you couldn't prove with the actual data. So instead you go, well, because you deleted it, it was the smoking gun. There's an opinion that hopefully you'll never have to read called Zubilaki v. UBS Warburg. It's 700 pages of stultifying crap because it's people went to law school trying to explain what backup tapes are. And email, and there's sometimes email is spelled amail because, it's some vowel and mail, and the paper, there's no paper thingy. Oh God. And eventually after 19, I think it's after 11, and eventually they settle. It's thank God. But we all kind of drilled into this, and I'm very fond of saying, when lawyers ask me now, what about the new rules? Zubilaki is dead, thank God. But that's just my rant. Okay, and dismissal of claims. It's the final defense. Yeah?
Are there times when it actually makes more sense to delete evidence than it is to hand it over?
Ooh, efficient breach. I like that. I like it. No, I like that because now, of course, you're running into another problem. How do you know you've deleted it? Think of it this way. You and I are in a lawsuit. I delete maybe it's a contract. You claim we have a contract. I claim I don't know who the hell you are. I've deleted all the emails that show any contract formation between us. I don't know what you have yet. You might be able to prove it. So I say, they've been deleted. You can then beat the shit out of me because not only can you prove it happened, you get the additional sting of sanctions against me for intentionally deleting it, proving it, and stuff like that in front of a jury? Oh my God. All of a sudden you got punitives. You go from you get to multiply the payoff by 8. So in that case, you realize you've doubled down. You've said I want to play for bigger stakes. So the knee-jerk reaction is no. Instead, let the stuff, because that's
I liken that to, one of my favorite public defender clients whose first line to the cops when caught with, I think it was half a pound of weed, said, "Man, you guys are lucky. I'm usually a 2-pound guy." Like, not even like, hi. Man, you admitted that not only are you normally carrying 2 pounds of weed, that you're carrying weed. The cop was most likely like, "Hey, Bob, how's it going?" Like, oh. And of course, then the guy's like, "Man, you're a public pretender. You suck." Like, dude, you did it yourself. But another rant. Yeah.
So, information that's obtained through subpoenas, which that's a lower standard than criminal stuff, like victim rights and so forth. Can that be that information is disclosed for that and be used for criminal prosecution?
It depends under the grounds of the subpoena. If you are subpoenaed by a grand jury and they get self-incriminating stuff, it depends. It may be excludable because the grounds for a subpoena and discovery it doesn't even have to be relevant. It has to be reasonably likely to get relevant information. So it's like, if you can just make some connection between what we're seeking and what we're trying to prove, you're good. Which is why police do not like to use subpoenas, because it's possible that you'll get evidence and it's got to sting when you think, I can prove it because I screwed up early, I can't prove it. So you as the guilty person are going to go free because of a technicality. And courts are very, very willing to smack people down for using a subpoena versus a warrant. Okay, discovery defenses. Going back to ability to quickly, efficiently, and get completely. Completely is the big part. To be able to safely say, I got everything. All the smoking guns that we have, you have. I do some, in the consulting side of the shop. I go to IT shops and go, "Can I see your basement?" And they're like, "Why do you want to see that?" "Because I want to see what boxes you have just lying around for parts, because that's discoverable." And they're like, "No, that's not." Like, well, it is. It's always fun to do that when, I've got a member of their legal team and a member of their IT team, and they're like, "Well, you're not qualified to say it." Like, actually, I am. I'm a freak. Okay. The ability to locate response information quickly and cheaply will drive down costs. It will also make you the golden boy to the legal department if you can pull this stuff off, because you now, in their minds, you've gone from being those assholes. And most legal departments and IT departments do not get along. I have a horror story. I have many horror stories, but this one's it bugs me. It also lets you, if you can say and eloquently explain to the legal department, recovering these 8,000 DLTs is expensive, time-consuming, and explain how. It will cost X amount of dollars, Y amount of weeks. They can then go back and say, "Wow," go to the judge and say, "Well, we don't have to give any." Done. If you can explain that to them. Of course, that requires that there's actually a relationship between the two departments. Document retention and destruction policies. This also goes to how you get rid of computers, how you get rid of old tapes. I'm a big fan of if you mark boxes, and if you haven't opened the box in 2 years, dump it. Enforced and rational. If you can automatically enforce your document destruction policy, do so. Because instead you're going to get the one idiot who's going to go and keep things. He or she has a stack of CD-ROMs that they've burned of old information. Now, because your company knew about it, because she knew about it, you can get sanctioned when you say, "This is all the information," and then someone is bright enough to think, "Sheila in accounting is a stack of CDs." Oops. I've already gone into sort of how you fight a discovery order. One of the things I love doing, because it helps my company, is what we like to call drinking from the fire hose. As you can tell, UHF was on the Comedy Channel when I saw this, when I was writing this up. You've got a smoking gun. Your initial reaction is, "I want to destroy it." Instead, you give them
a dump truck full of information. You stick the one smoking gun right in the middle. You go, find that one. Which is why I'm a big fan of, for that, paper discovery, because you can't grep, 800 boxes of paper. And now I'm going to, almost sing Kumbaya, because I want to, if you're in a large organization that has a dedicated legal team, if you all work together, it's really, really effective. Or at least I think it is, because I've actually never seen it happen, unfortunately.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said dump it out as paper. Do you have to, is there a way to specify what language?
Nice try. No.
You're a super geek in writing everything in Klingon.
It has to be in the form, if your business ran in Klingon, then you're allowed to. It has to be in the form that you used it in. Yeah, you can't.
So then they'd have to pay for a translator.
Well, if your company runs in Klingon, dude, you get the biggest dork of the universe award.
Security, right?
Someone is going to be running on time. Okay.
You could digitally index all that dump truck full of paper.
But seriously, do they have to specify? Can they specify language?
You can. Generally, it's the form you used it in. I'm going to skip transitive trust because the only thing I mentioned about that. Additional resources, and because my employer dumped a bunch of shit that you don't care about into my presentation, this is the presentation that will never be seen again. The one I'm going to give Noid will be the corporate one where we talk about all of our capabilities that you don't care about and I don't care about. So if you want mine, email me. And any last questions, or are we completely tapped for time? Okay. Thank you much.
Okay, while Rooster's getting set up, I'm going to be doing another raffle. Don't know how many of you folks are familiar with Jason Scott or textfiles.com. He did a really cool documentary on the BBS scene, and he was nice enough to give us a couple of them to give away. And I've actually seen this. It's pretty slick, especially having grown up during the BBS scene days. So.
Old fart.
Dr. Van Harl, you around here?